So far in this AWS Cloud Engineer Challenge by Forrest Brazil, I've been clicking buttons in the AWS console. In part 4 of this challenge today, I'm answering one big question. Can I deploy my backend from scratch using only code and do it safely? Hey guys, if you're new here, my name is Alston. I'm an infrastructure engineer and this is part 4 of the AWS Cloud Engineer Challenge. You can click on this link to check out the rest of the videos here. Part 4 is all about infrastructure as code and I've been very excited for this. Instead of manually creating AWS resources, I'm using Terraform, and this is how real production infrastructure is built. And Terraform is something that's always been asked on job applications. The first question, can I deploy my backend from scratch using code? Yes, and this is the biggest win of the week. Using Terraform, I define my AWS provider, IAM permissions, backend resources like Lambda, DynamoDB, and API gateway. With a single command, Terraform apply, Terraform creates the entire backend without me even touching the AWS console. If I give this code to another engineer, they'll get the exact same infrastructure. Next question is, can I destroy and recreate the infrastructure safely? Yes. Terraform tracks everything it creates in something called a state file. This means Terraform always knows what exists, what needs to change, what can be safely destroyed. When I run Terraform destroy, Terraform cleanly removes all resources, no leftovers, no guessing. And this is critical, especially in a production environment because of cost control, testing, disaster recovery. Now for testing, for this week, my meaningful test is simple to actually verify the service is actually functioning as it did previously. After deployment, I verify that my API endpoint is reachable, the Lambda function executes, the backend behaves as expected. This confirms that the infrastructure isn't just created, like I've just created the DynamoDB, the Lambda function, and it's not integrating properly. It actually works. And in the real world, this would later evolve into automated tests, CI/CD pipelines, which is going to be the next phase. That's going to be for next week. Understanding the deployment flow is very important. So I write the Terraform configuration files, initialize Terraform, plan the changes, and apply infrastructure, and then I validate the functionality. Nothing is random, every change is reviewed before it's applied. That predictability is why companies trust infrastructure as code in production, especially if, for example, I was doing this whole infrastructure again and had to go to the AWS console. Even if I had to follow a document, I would probably miss a step or by accident click on something else, and it's prone to errors, human errors. Whereas if it's already in code, as long as it's tested, another infrastructure engineer can actually bring up the infrastructure with a simple code. This week is a turning point. I'm really enjoying the infrastructure as code aspect, especially Terraform. I'm no longer learning isolated AWS services. I'm learning how real cloud systems are built, managed, and automated. Now, AWS does have its own infrastructure as code service called CloudFormation. The reason for me choosing Terraform over CloudFormation is because Terraform is vendor agnostic, can work on-prem and with any major cloud provider, whereas CloudFormation, you're tied with AWS because it solely works on AWS. To get started with Terraform, I actually followed the tutorial on the HashiCorp website. If you don't have an AWS account set up to deploy a test infrastructure, you can use their virtual sandbox environment, which I thought was pretty cool. It gets you started really quickly, just following their tutorials online. Let's go through a little quick demo of how I will destroy my infrastructure and then bring it back up using Terraform. This right here is my Cloud Resume project, which is hosted on the S3 bucket. So if I click on refresh, the visitor counter is getting updated. 3, 4, and if I go to my AWS console, as you can see, there's already 2 APIs over here. Visitor counter Lambda is the one which I created manually end of last year. And resume counter API is the one that I've created today. If I check my DynamoDB table, there should be only one because I've deleted the previous DynamoDB table. And yeah, you can see the infrastructure is there. From my local machine, I'm going to destroy the infrastructure. So Terraform destroy. Very simple command. Do you really want to destroy all the resources? There's no undo. Only yes will be accepted to confirm. Yes. For any reason, if you're already working with AWS and you're working in AWS at your company, make sure you're not running this on your company account. That'll be a big disaster. Okay, so you can see it says destroy complete, resources 11 destroyed. Back to my AWS console. If I click refresh on the DynamoDB, it's gone. API gateway, refresh, and it's gone. This is my old counter, so that's going to be there. If I go back to my cloud resume, as you can see, this is the visitor counter. It's total 4. If I click on refresh, it should not work. Because the Lambda is deleted, it's not getting the correct files. And now we will create the infrastructure back again. Back again at my local console. Terraform apply. And it'll do a prerequisite check and everything. So before this, you got a couple of other commands that you have to do. But since I've already done them, I already know it's already initialized. And Terraform will perform the actions described above. Only yes will be accepted. Yes. Take a couple of minutes, but it's generally pretty quick. And there you go. It took less than a minute. Resources 11 were deleted, so 11 are added. And if I go back to my AWS console, the API is updated, and so the DynamoDB table. In the Terraform code, I've also updated the IAM permissions for the Lambda role and the Lambda itself. Okay, so everything is back. If I go back to the cloud resume, and the count is back to 1 because all the infrastructure is back set up to the base count for 0. In part 5, I'll start taking this further, adding more automation and production style practices. And this will probably be the last part of the series of this Cloud Resume Challenge. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.